Bam. There we go. All right, Tiana,
Okay.
introduce yourself.
Hi, you guys. I'm Tiana. I've been to so many Domi's events. They're always so fun. So I'm just here. um, what else? I'm 24. I recently just sort of pivoted from being a VA to a coach. So I'm an organization coach. So I teach people how to be organized and productive in their business or their life or whatever they need help with. Um, yeah, I'm excited to be here today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining, Tiana. This is going to be an interesting talk. You haven't heard me do this one before, so it's actually going to be new for you. Tiana's been in pretty much everything I've ever done.
Yeah.
Let's be real. Let's be real. Hi, Stephanie. Thanks for joining. Feel free to join us on camera if you want, but you don't have to. So if anyone, by the way, does not want to be on camera, you don't have to. I'm not forcing you to. This is a courage workshop, though, so if you're only not doing it because you're scared, I will put that out there. Anyway, thank you, Tiana, for introducing yourself. Who would like to go next?
I can go.
There we go.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kimmy. I'm 30 years old. I was going into VA, but I've kind of pivoted to bookkeeping, and now I'm looking more at doing proofreading and editing. Just finding my thing right now.
I'm really excited for you to get into the proofreading and editing because I really think that'll be useful. If anyone has any tips on where Kimmy could maybe look at doing some proofreading and editing, feel free to shoot that your way.
I would definitely appreciate it.
I was just recommending like the corporate world could use it because if you've seen half of the stuff they write. Anyway, thank you so much. Who would like to introduce themselves next?
I don't mind going. So
there you go.
My name is Paulina. I'm 29 and I am basically just a content creator and graphic designer. I have a brand pretty much for introverts. So on Instagram, I'm Paulina the Introvert. And yeah, I just like to promote a culture of celebrating individuality and being unconventional, including being an introvert.
It's one of Paulina's t-shirts.
Yeah.
I think it's cute. Anyway, I had to, as soon as you started talking about that, I had to share it.
Thank you.
Makes really cute little graphic tees. So
I'll post the Instagram handles in the chat.
Oh, yes. Everyone, please post your Instagram handles in your chat, in the chat, so that you guys can follow each other. Awesome. So Stacy, Steph, would either of you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I can go.
All right, there we go.
Hi, my name is Steph. I'm 21 and I'm an engagement and lead generation VA for online service providers.
And I would actually, and I almost forgot to make this a question almost as we went around, but would love to hear what you're most excited to learn about in today's workshop.
One of like my biggest values when it comes to my business is all about being yourself, being like genuine, and yeah.
I'm super excited to have you here. All right, Stacy, you're the last one, so.
Hi everyone, my name is Stacy. I'm 19 years old. And when I was starting in this business, I was a general VA, but now I'm also an engagement specialist for coaches. And I love to talk about mindset, mental health, spirituality. So that's kind of where I am. And what I will expect from here is just make friends and get to know each other. And like, I also like it because, you know, also about making good relationships with people, building genuine and authentic connections. And I also love to talk about being yourself in social media.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I am the authenticity coach, so most people that come to my events expect something or want something like that. Wouldn't make any sense otherwise. Awesome. All right, so we'll kind of see who comes and pops in later because I know I've heard some people would be. Again, it's a Sunday, you really never know. but so I just wanted to kind of quickly go over what we're going to be doing in this workshop. There's going to be a lot of questions I'm going to be asking. I won't force anyone to answer all the questions, but I will ask that you maybe at least write your answers down in some way. I could type it on your phone. I don't really care. Mute yourself and speak it into a microphone. I don't care. Whatever that might be, just so you can start to reflect on them. But I will also hopefully ask, yes, go get some paper, Tiana. I'll also hopefully ask that some of you or one of you will at least come up and maybe answer or talk about it. Because I would like for this to be a discussion. So we are going to be delving into topics such as what we're afraid of. And as I'm going through the types of courage, we're going to also hopefully have some of you guys come up and share what types of courage you resonate the most with and which ones you think you might lack a little bit more of. So it is going to be a lot of self-reflection. There's going to be discussion. We're also going to talk about the things that motivate us. And then we're going to kind of cap it all off with a vision meditation as well, because that's usually a good motivating thing to do. But yeah, lots of questions. So hopefully you have paper, pen and paper, phone, whatever it is. And I'm going to start sharing my screen. Just so you know, I'm going to be sharing my screen and unsharing it constantly because I'm going to be showing a question and then coming back so we could all see our beautiful faces and not just a screen with words, which isn't as fun. Any questions before I get started? All good? Awesome. All right, let's get started. Also, I think I'm sharing the wrong screen, so let me make sure I'm on the right page. Perfect. Share my screen. Awesome. So quick introduction to me. I know a lot of you already know me, but this is also for anyone watching the replay as well. I'm Domi. I'm the authenticity coach. I like using the term baller a lot just because I thought it was cute and fun. This is an image of me with fake sunglasses and a basketball because it made me look cool. I started out as a trained journalist, decided that wasn't my field, went into admin assisting, decided I hated that, became kind of a YouTuber in a kind of a small YouTuber community that I built up, then became a production assistant, then went back to being an admin assistant, then became a VA, and now I'm a coach. So journeys, this was mine in as few words as possible. I know we all kind of have our own. So one of the things I like to encourage people to do is to really think about what your journey has looked like. Because I know sometimes when we're stuck in the moment of being like, why am I not getting clients? Why does it seem like I'm making no progress? You have. your entire life is your progress. And you have to kind of look at it in that way to kind of see the progress and know that things are going to change again. Yeah, I empower entrepreneurs now to kind of bravely build their dream businesses their way, not the way everyone else is telling you, but their way, and get really, really excited about their businesses. So hoping to make work fun and exciting so it's not overwhelming, become part of a community or build out your own community, because that's one of the most motivating things you can ever have. And then hopefully feel more happy, confident, and fulfilled. And I always like to refer to the hero's journey. So that's why I throw in the become the hero of your own story. Why is this showing my bottom screen? Oh, well. Anyway, yeah, I've been holding these events since October. Tiana's been to all of them, pretty much all of them. And I run a mastermind that's kind of like my big thing. So these are some pictures from previous events I've held. And Tiana is also in my mastermind. So if you have any questions about that, she's there. And make sure to kind of stay to the end because I do have a special surprise at the end. But if you can't, I will have a replay. Anyway, first question. Let's think about what is the biggest risk that you've taken or scariest thing that you've done in your life? And I want you to kind of also think about why did you do it? How did it feel? And what was the result? How did it turn out? So I'm going to leave this up on the screen for a few more seconds, just in case. And is there anyone who would like to share?
Mm,
Who? Is somebody else gonna?
Yeah, I can go first.
Oh, all right,
Okay,
all right.
go ahead.
Stephanie can go first.
Sorry. I think one of the, I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear
Yep.
me?
I
Yeah.
can hear you.
I don't. Yeah. Okay. One of the scariest things I've done was basically set boundaries for myself because I've always been like a people pleaser. So when it came to setting up boundaries, it was kind of like I had to stand up for myself. And that is scary because I was going against one of my values, which was like people pleasing. So it was really hard for me to do that, and also scary to actually set those boundaries.
What kind of boundary did you set?
Basically, I would like give up time for myself just so I can please like other I enjoy meditating, and I will give up the meditating part in my daily life because like someone asked me to do something.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Who here is or was a people pleaser? Maybe not you, Kimmy. I feel like I know I definitely was. I know a lot of people are. Be glad that you were not.
Oh no, my mom raised me with a very loud voice,
Good.
and I wasn't gonna be pushed around for anything.
That's good. That is good. We like to see that. But it's great, Daisy. Sorry, Stephanie. You're just two STs, and that's going to confuse me. I'm really sorry. And also you're moving around on the screen. But it's really great that you're starting to set those boundaries because I know it's scary sometimes when you feel like you say no to someone, you're like, but what if they don't like that? What if they get mad at me? What if a variety of what ifs you could possibly come up with? And then usually you end up realizing it feels pretty good. Like, you're like, oh wait, this is fine. Does anyone else have like anything they want to share about the scariest? Yeah, Kimmy.
Right after my car accident, I took a really big risk in moving to Texas to go to school. I live in California. And I moved in with my aunts and uncles, and it was a really big risk and big step to take. And unfortunately, it all kind of came crashing down, but I wanted to see if I could actually continue with the way I was living, but unfortunately my health did not agree with it.
Yeah, well, I mean, sometimes you learn through experience.
Oh yeah.
Do you, it's an interesting question. Do you regret doing it or are you glad that you did?
I don't regret going to the school.
Good. That's good. I'm glad to hear that. And I guess what did you take from it? What was your takeaway from that whole experience?
That people aren't always what they seem, and even when they encourage you to lean on them, that they're not necessarily worth leaning on.
I like the way you phrase that. I like the way you phrase that. Because it's not so much a trust issue. It's like a, don't trust people, but it's more like some people don't deserve your trust.
Exactly.
Interesting way of looking at things. Thank you for sharing. Really appreciate that. Does anyone else want to share kind of the biggest risk or scariest thing? Tiana, I think I saw you raise your hand. Oh, and Stacy. We'll go Tiana and then Stacy.
I think for me it was investing in myself and my business. That was super scary because I didn't even know that this was a thing, this whole entrepreneur world. And so then all these coaches came to me, and like I remember you, GM, you were like one of the first people to message me, and I was like, ooh, I like her. Okay. But yeah, it was scary, but it definitely paid off because I don't think I'd be doing any of this if I hadn't. So yeah.
It's fun how it pays off, right? How
Yeah.
it's so scary and then somehow it manages to work out in weird ways. It's not always the way you think it will.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad that you are still hanging out with me. So, and I hope that you will continue to hang out with me, paid or not.
Always. It's so fun.
Awesome. And I think Stacy wanted to share. I'm pointing, by the way, and I know you guys aren't on those spots on the screen. It's just what I'm doing. What about you, Stacy?
For me, it was dropping out of college. I was in psychology major, and my goal was like having my own clinic, but my teacher told me like it's gonna get like 10 years to do that because I need like my PhD, my master's. For me, well, I live by my own with my uncle also here in Dallas, Texas, and it's so like I don't have the support, I don't have the money, and when I was like choosing what I want to do in my life, like it came across like all of this about being a virtual assistant and working, from anywhere. My parents live in Mexico, so I travel to Mexico like once a year or twice. But in my 9 to 5, they don't give me like more than 2 or 1 week. So my goal for me is like just having the freedom to go anywhere without telling anyone.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Go. It was always scary, like dropping out because everyone have these expectations on me of um accomplish the American dream, and like if you don't have a degree you are not successful enough. But like something that I learned here is that you make your own way to successful. Like everyone has their own business, or maybe you want like a 5K month business, or maybe I just want like 1 or 2 clients because that makes me enough, like feel comfortable with that. So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that you're kind of seeing the variety of things you can do, because I think it's definitely an unfortunately outdated idea that, you have to go to college. I did go to college. I don't regret the experience, and I do regret the money put into the education, as sad as that sounds. Because again, it's also the same here, but certainly the international students that were coming in as well, it was always this concept of like you had to get a degree in order to do something, and that turns out it's not anymore. But that was one of the, I guess that's definitely one of the biggest misconceptions, and I'm glad that you're kind of seeing that and being like, well, I can create my own path, and you have a goal, which is to be able to travel, like to go back to Mexico, and to, I guess, even to travel anywhere, right? I mean, I would love to go see my family in Brazil. I would love to go see my friends in London and Sweden and all of that. And you can't do that when you have 1 week of vacation.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you're seeing that. So that's really awesome. And I'm glad you took the risk of being like, school isn't for me. I'm gonna do this path because this is more for me. So congratulations. I know everyone else has shared, but Paulina, did you want to share as well? You don't have
Sure,
to.
actually.
Okay.
No, totally. I don't mind. So for me, like the scariest thing was a couple of years ago. I was teaching for 3 years in a row, and it's funny because when I started teaching, I always had in the back of my mind, like, if this is what I want, but I don't know if this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. But I always had a passion with, like, sharing with people, and I just love being in that classroom environment and everything. So I was like, but if it doesn't work out, I'm going to go with my gut. And so and after that 3 years, I was just like, okay, this is too much. I can't do this anymore. But that was scary because I kind of felt like I was almost letting myself down in a way, like that I wasn't able to like make it work, you know. But at the same time, deep down, I was like, I want to try something else. I want to try something that I'm gonna be happy doing for the rest of my life. So I did something completely unconventional, and I'm fortunate to be able to live with my parents right now and not have to worry about like that, financially. So I'm like, let me just take a break because that's something I've never done. So I was like, let me just take a year and not think about finances. Let me just kind of explore different hobbies and see where that leads, and see if that gives me any insight into like what I want to pursue in the future. So that ultimately led me back to my roots in art, and now with graphic design and having like the apparel brand and everything. So it's rewarding, and it's still completely a work in progress. I wouldn't call myself successful. That's why I'm,
You are
always
successful.
grow.
What are you talking about?
But yeah, so it was scary.
Awesome. I mean, it always is. I mean, yeah, it's always very, very scary. I know I call myself brave. The bravest things I ever did was I moved to LA without a job and without a house. I just packed up my car and I went, and I was like, well, let's see what happens. I already knew I had a place. I was staying with some friends for a week there. So I had that. So I was like, okay, I have a week to find a place. And I had some savings that I had saved up for this purpose. So it's not like I was going there with nothing. But I remember that was one of the weirdest things I've ever done. No, I did not stay in LA because COVID kicked me out, essentially. It's too expensive at that point. But it was definitely one of the most interesting decisions I've made in my life. I would not do the same thing again. However, I'm glad I did it just for the experience of seeing what it really took to get an apartment and what it really took to get a job out in LA. That was something that I needed to see in person. So we've all done scary things. So it's kind of good to reflect on the things that you think were some of the bravest things you've done, because sometimes, and what might be interesting for everyone to reflect on, sometimes you'll find that something that you didn't realize was brave is actually one of the bravest things that you've done. So I love personally going to my friends or family and asking them this question, the same question, because you'd be really interested to hear what they have to say. Because sometimes they'll just be like, oh, I think it was this. And you're like, what? That was brave. What are you talking about? That was just normal me. And we're going to get into the types of courage because that plays into that. But I highly recommend actually going up to people around you, people that are close to you, and seeing what they think is the bravest thing that you've ever done in their eyes, because it does give you a new perspective. I'm going to share a screen. I do have a couple more questions, but I'm going to have you all just kind of start reflecting on them amongst yourselves for now, since I want to make sure I get through the rest of it, and then we can continue the discussion about that. So the next question was, what is the biggest risk you've taken specifically in your business or career? And I know some of us are just starting. So you might not have a lot in here, but sometimes, they don't have to be big things yet. So it'd be interesting for you guys just to reflect on what you think that the biggest risk in your business. Oh my goodness, can you stop? Okay, well, this is fine. We're good. Back. Just reflect on what the biggest risks you think you've taken in your business or career, why you did it, how it felt. It might be money related. It might be something you did in terms of outreach, might be something else. Whatever it is, just reflect on it a little bit. And I'll give you guys just a few moments here to do that. Look, you can discuss some of the stuff at the end if you're noticing something's coming up for you. All right, and the next question, if you haven't finished this, don't worry, you'll have time. This is a really big one, is what risks or scary things do you know you need to do, or you believe you need to do, but you haven't yet? And why are you putting that off? So this is a loaded question. I don't expect you to have the answer to this right now. But I would love for you guys to add into the chat if there's a risk that you know or believe you need to take and you just haven't yet. Put that in the chat so we can kind of see, because it's usually, some people's are kind of related. So I'd love to kind of hear what some of these risks are for you all. And if anyone would like to unmute and share, then you may as well. Oops, someone has joined us. Oh, it's Alexis. Hi, Alexis. Thanks for joining. don't know if she can hear me just yet. Oh, Alexis is here. Hi. It sounds like you're in kind of a loud place. You might not be able to unmute, but right now we are kind of doing a little bit of reflecting. We were just talking about what the biggest risk or scariest thing we've done in our life and business was. Kind of two separate questions, life and business. And now we're talking about what risks you know or believe you need to be taking, but you aren't yet, and why. So is there anyone, feel free to put in the chat if you feel more comfortable doing that, but is there anyone who would like to share what they came up with? It doesn't have to be a fully formed thought. I know a lot of this is a lot, like you need to kind of reflect on it for longer. I understand. But sometimes it's easier to talk it out too. So is there anyone who'd like to share? All right.
So I've got, for some reason, this is really scaring me, is the actual jumping into proofreading, because I'm afraid of all the things I'm going to miss on my first few projects.
Okay. So you're afraid you're not good enough at proofreading yet or editing?
Yeah.
And what is that, just because you feel like you haven't proofread or edited enough yet?
Pretty much. And with some of my health problems, it makes it hard to focus sometimes. So it's like, it's a mixture of things between my perception of my abilities at this point. But it's been hard for me to even jump in and start taking the classes. I put it off for like 2 months.
Yeah, no, but you started taking the classes, so that's a huge step, right?
Yeah.
So that's awesome. We love that. Giant claps. I do this a lot, by the way, like my little golf claps. So I'm not like, this is my usual clap. You don't need to hear that. But I'm really proud of you, first of all, for taking obviously the first step to feeling more comfortable with it. And we'll be diving into things we can do to obviously get past these things. But I think something maybe you can also start reflecting on along with that big fear or reason why you haven't done it is maybe what is the one thing you can do right now that would make you feel better about taking that risk? Whether it's, whether it's taking another proofreading class, whether it's doing, pro bono work for one person, like maybe it's just doing it once and being like, oh, okay, I'm good at this. Whether it's, whatever that could be, that would make you feel better about going out there and getting paid for it.
Yeah.
So, because that's the concern, right? Like usually when you're being paid for it, it's like, oh shoot, this has to be good, right? I have to deserve it.
Exactly.
I mean, let's be real. You're probably a lot better at it than you think you are. Like, from an outside perspective, I could probably tell you that you probably are, but to make yourself feel more comfortable, there are probably some things you could do along the way, whether it's just a quick project for someone for free and then being like, oh, I was really good at that.
Yeah, I corrected, a friend of mine had to get emergency custody of her kids. So I actually proofread and corrected her letter to the judge. So she came to me and was like, look at it, please.
I'm telling you, the corporate idea is a good idea, because you're gonna look at that stuff and be like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like, even I looked at it and was like, how did you miss all of this? This is a nightmare to even look at. So I feel like, yeah, you could do some good work there. And they frankly would not even notice if you missed something based on all the things they missed before.
They're like, it looks better. It looks better.
Significantly better. No, and the good thing is that not would say good thing, but this is actually a type of imposter syndrome, and I know that Tiana had suffered from this before too. It's the expert type of imposter syndrome, the type that is so comfortable learning that they avoid doing, and they know that's what's going on, but like you keep thinking, I have to know more, I have to be better, someone out there is better than me. So you have to like you end up learning, and you ended up learning all the time, and then you realize you're not actually doing anything with that knowledge. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
It's a very frustrating type to be stuck in.
it is.
So yeah, and I know you know that too. So otherwise you wouldn't be saying all this out loud. So yeah, let's kind of move on as well, because we can kind of keep addressing this as we go along. So for anyone else, if you want to share what you were kind of thinking in the chat, feel free to go ahead with that. Sharing my screen again. So this is a really important question, just so you don't have to take the risk yet, but it's more to call yourself out on being like, what is this thing that's been in the back of my mind? So continue to journal on this. So we're going to talk about the types of courage real quick. This is actually really interesting. I always like types of things. It just kind of helps you contextualize words that we don't understand them as well as we think we do. So something like imposter syndrome that people use all the time, and you're kind of like, what really is it? Types of imposter syndrome helps you kind of contextualize it for you individually. Someone's being loud outside. So types of courage, we're going to kind of talk about these 6, and this is actually a common thing. You can look it up, the 6 types of courage. So you don't have to take notes on this because you could very easily find it online. We're basically what we're talking about here is we're all brave in some ways and not so brave in others. So that's why I said before, asking other people what they think the bravest thing you've done is sometimes really interesting, because you'll be like, I had no idea that was even considered brave. Like, I thought that was just what people were supposed to do. So let's go through the types of courage. I'm also going to be giving you examples of each, and I have to pull up my phone for this as well, because there's so many different examples of all of them. All right, this is the one a lot of people know about already. That's why I'm starting with it. Physical courage. This is the type of courage where you are feeling fear, yet you choose to act, and it usually is in a physical or sensory way in some capacity. So you're the risk that's happening here is usually some form of bodily harm. Again, this is the kind of people who will usually be playing. Maybe they'll be playing a ton of sports. They exercise consistently. They eat a very particular way to maybe look a particular way. They are out there getting on roller coasters and jumping off of cliffs. But it doesn't have to just look like that. Someone who has physical courage might also just be someone who works out every single day or something like that. It doesn't have to be someone who's jumping up cliffs. I'm just saying. But the point of this one often has to do with, and I'm going to kind of pull up the description of this one because this one's actually really, really interesting. So this is someone who may maybe be less afraid to enter a dark room or sleep in the dark, someone who is training for a marathon, someone who is able to resist the temptation to eat junk food, someone who is exercising regularly, someone who enjoys the outdoors, no matter the weather, this kind of person. If the lack of this can look like holding back or hiding, clinging to an unhealthy habit, usually a physical habit, avoiding physical challenges, letting a previous injury, and I'm talking injury, I'm not talking something that's literally debilitating, letting a previous injury like stop you from doing something again that you could technically do. Obviously this has very little, this is all about things you can do. Yeah, so that's usually what physical courage can look like. So someone who maybe is avoiding going to the doctor could also be a lack of physical courage. I'm saying can, so take this with all, the grain of salt for yourself. As I'm going through these, by the way, I would love for you to kind of rank them against each other for you personally, because at the end, I'm going to kind of ask for your personal ranking. I'm going to share mine as well. You might find it hard to kind of do that, but this is all really for your own sake, so don't take it too seriously. Emotional courage. So another kind of courage. This one is all about, following your heart. The risk is usually opening yourself up to unpleasant emotions. So perhaps if you're finding yourself afraid to feel unpleasant emotions, so to feel sad, to feel angry, any of that, that can be a lack of emotional courage in some sense. If you're more open to that, if you're more just like, no, I'm going to cry when I want to, everyone's going to know how I feel. I don't mind if I get hurt, or not really, I don't mind, because everyone minds a little bit. It's like, if I get hurt, so be it. I'm still going to do this thing anyway. Yeah, so this usually has to do with, taking on the emotional risking feeling really, really bad without attachment to the outcome of it. So this also can look like someone who is fine with confessing their feelings to someone. They're like, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do it. Even if it hurts, I'm going to go do it. And the lack of this can look like the opposite. So I think this one's pretty self-explanatory. But like, anyone has any questions about these as I'm going through them, feel free to put it in the chat or unmute yourself real quick. So emotional courage. So try and rank these against each other for yourselves. Intellectual courage. This is my personal favorite. One of my personal favorites. I thought this was really interesting. This kind of courage has to do with expanding your horizons, letting go of what you find to be familiar. Basically, again, being open to being wrong or not knowing something. So as people grow up, you'll often run into people who are afraid of what they don't know and will butt against it. They'll be like, no, like I can't believe that, any of this stuff, because I don't know it. Doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't fit in with what I know. Therefore, so that usually has, that has to do with the lack of intellectual courage. None of this is horrible, by the way. I need to point that out. This doesn't, if one of these are at the bottom because there's going to be something you lack, courage that you lack, it's fine. Like, we're not all like super brave heroes running out to save the day. This is all just for awareness of yourself. So the strength in this one is usually a willingness to learn, to unlearn. That's what I think is the important one, and to relearn. So someone who is just open to gaining new knowledge and adjusting what they thought they knew. So that's what we consider intellectual courage. Social courage. Oh, Stephanie raised her hand. What's up, Stephanie?
Is intellectual courage kind of like stepping out of your comfort zone? I know all of these have to do with like stepping out of your comfort zone, like physical.
Oh, froze for a second.
Well, you have to intellectual when it's more like I feel like intellectual is more
related to what we're doing. Yeah. Yeah. So here's what, and I'll get to this, but a lot of what we're doing in our space is connected to intellectual courage and to social courage, especially. And you'll see some of the other ones pop in as well. Like, obviously emotional courage is also important in many ways, but, some of the reason why being an entrepreneur can be so difficult is because of this. It's exactly because of this. And the reason why it's less difficult than it was like 3 years ago is also because of this, because we know more about it. And so one of the reasons why it is so difficult to kind of go down the entrepreneur path is, again, because other people in society maybe don't fully understand it. So there's that. There's so much information out there that it's so overwhelming. And maybe we grew up with this idea of like, you work a job, you work a 9 to 5. And if that's what's stuck in your head, then, if you have intellectual courage, you're more open to being like, well, I don't have to work a 9 to 5. I don't have to work for someone. I don't have to do anything this particular way, because as it turns out, there are other ways of doing things. That's one way of looking at this. So it also can come up in many other situations. So, and you've probably noticed the connection, but it can show up in, for example, social justice, where someone maybe isn't open to a different way of thinking. And I have to say, it works both ways. It actually does work both ways. But we've all kind of seen this where someone is not open to being wrong, or not open to relearning the way they've always known things. So this connects into that as well. And I think this is one that people don't talk, the type of courage people do not talk about enough in society in general. But yes, as entrepreneurs, super, super and this is where the imposter syndrome part comes in, right? Like the part where you feel like you don't know things. This is where that can come in. Some people can get really, really stuck on what they know and keep stubbornly trying to do that and wonder why it doesn't work. While others are going to be way more open to being like, okay, I can learn, I can unlearn, I can relearn. My mind is open. My mind is ready to be molded. This is also a really big one because kids are usually much, much better at this. Are really much better at all the different type of courses, frankly, because they don't have anything to compare it to, frankly. They don't really know things yet, frankly. So it's a lot easier for them to open their minds to this. Anyway, it accidentally popped forward, but kind of tap into that inner child a little bit, I say personally, because that can help you be willing to open your mind to new ways of doing things. So yeah, I'm going to move on to social courage because that also ties into entrepreneurship in a big way, especially nowadays with social media. This has to do often with being yourself in the face of adversity or just in a social setting, being you in a social setting. And this can mean getting rid of, and I say getting rid of, it's really aggressive, but getting rid of people or groups or whatever that do not serve you. This can mean dressing the way that you would like to dress, no matter what the trends say. This can be, yeah, this it just generally has to do with not caring about the judgment of other people, and doing what you want to do, despite what the social world or what the social norms are. So the risk, again, is social embarrassment, exclusion, unpopularity, rejection from other people, judgment, all that standard stuff we talk about. And this is big in our particular entrepreneur space. Because one of the biggest fears you'll see a lot of people, and maybe some of you might have as well, is this kind of fear of what others are going to think. When you put out certain thoughts, when you wear a certain thing, when you look a certain way. That's not going to be all of us. I know I've definitely gotten better at this. But yeah, the strengths in this one is that you have leadership. Automatically, you're kind of a leader. You can easily be a trendsetter rather than a trend follower. Remember, it doesn't, just because you might think that you lack this doesn't mean you're a bad person, doesn't mean anything bad. It just is for awareness. And then the ability to stand alone, which I personally think is a really crucial thing, which if you look at that and you think that's scary, which I know some people have looked at phrases like this, being able to stand alone, that's like terrifying. That probably says something. It's not a bad thing, but it just keeps you remember that is a fear. Because it's not, I personally, because I struggle with social courage, find it really difficult sometimes to just literally stand alone. To like be the only one that can believe something, for example. Like for example, let's just say you put a thought out there, and you were, it's probably, maybe it's an unpopular opinion or something that a lot of people don't agree with. Imagine that everyone came to that post and started saying they don't agree. If that's scary to you and that's terrifying and that would stop you from putting anything up, or the negative comments from others would avoid, stop you from putting things up, it often has to do with this. So this is another one that plays a huge part. We got two more types. Again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to put in the chat. Hopefully I see it. Raise your hand, just unmute yourself. I don't care. We're all adults here. Moral courage. So this is the standing up for what's right type of courage. It doesn't just mean always standing up for what's right. It can also just be living a life that is right without without doing it just to get people like you, for example. That's something else. This one has a similar risk to the other ones, risking shame, opposition, disapproval, judgment, all that great stuff. And the strengths about it are standing firm with your beliefs and moral convictions. So, this is, I think this one's pretty self-explanatory, frankly. This one really just has to do with, if you believe in something or you value something and you believe it is morally right or just to do a certain thing. If you struggle to stand up when you see that happening, then it might be a lack of moral courage. I know I have personally struggled with this one previously as well. So I will, if anyone relates to that, I've certainly done that too. But I know there's actually quite a few people I know, and I'm just going to take a guess, Kimmy, that this is not you, that you are. You probably have this pretty high up, knowing you. Yeah, I'm just like knowing you. This is my guess. So, someone who probably would not be afraid if someone were to say something that they did not believe in or they believed was going to hurt someone. They would be like, like, I'm here. Let's have an argument. Let's have a discussion. And the last one is spiritual courage. This one's kind of an interesting one. It's not religious courage for a reason. This one often has to do with living with purpose and meaning in life, in some way. This can be tied to religious beliefs and how you live your life, but the risk here obviously is anger, disapproval from others, pain, isolation, all that great stuff. The strengths here is the ability to ask the deeper questions and accept that you are unlikely to find the full answer. So the interesting one about this, and this is not as tied into entrepreneurship, but it is important to understand as well. The important one with this is that the people who have it are the ones who are more open to trying to find the right answers, trying to have discussions and understand, while also simultaneously knowing that there will never be a full understanding of it, because that's often how this works, right? It's a constant learning, constant awakening, constant journey. And then the ones who might lack spiritual courage are the ones who cling to fundamentalism, ones who cling to dogmas, because they feel like they need to know, which is tied to a fear. It's often tied to a fear of not knowing. Kind of like that intellectual courage again, but in a slightly different manner. So that's an interesting one to understand, if you kind of have this or not. So I'm really interested, and feel free to put this in the chat, unmute yourself, or whatever you would like to do, but kind of what your general rankings are. And if you don't have a full ranking, just kind of like, I know this one's high, I know this one's low. That's good too. That's kind of the purpose of it. I know for me, just so you all kind of have my general sense of, I rank spiritual courage as pretty high for me. I'm very, very open, and I love asking those deeper questions. Intellectual courage, I also rank fairly high for me as well. I know that my social and physical courage are fairly low. I hate the dark. I don't like being in pain. And I definitely fear judgment from other people. And I'm definitely the kind of person that can sometimes wait to see what others do before I'll do anything, especially in groups, in person. So this is me being honest about that. Does anyone want to kind of share their thoughts on how it plays out for them?
I can go first.
Tiana? All right. Oh, sorry. We'll start with Tiana. We'll go to you, Stephanie.
Okay.
Okay. I think for me, from top to bottom, it would be spiritual, moral, and then physical. And then I'm like going back and forth between what should be next, either intellectual or emotional. I'm not really sure. I feel like maybe they're tied. I know for me, social's at the bottom for sure.
Constant.
I know, but I can't really decide which one is stronger between emotional and intellectual. So
yeah, that one's kind of, I think that one was kind of a weird one for me to realize. I think because I used to think I had very high emotional courage. Like I was going to rank that high, but the more I read about it, the more I realized I don't. Because I'm, for example, like in the ways I am emotionally courageous, I am emotionally courageous in that I will be open to talking about my feelings. I'm open to being like, I was sad, or I was feeling this way. But part of emotional courage also has to do with being able to, I guess, being willing to feel pain, and that might even, wherever that might be. Necessarily. So it could be in a social setting, which I know for me, that is a no. I'm like, no. I'm not doing that. but I am okay with it alone. So that's why I kind of ended up in the middle for me personally. um, I don't know for you if, and I'm actually find it interesting that you put intellectual courage lower down. Because I would have thought it was going to be higher up for you, but you know yourself better. I was just like, oh, interesting. So, you know, you don't have to rank them perfectly, but just start to kind of, I guess, understand, you know, in what ways am I not maybe emotionally courageous or not intellectually courageous. Obviously, looking this up more and doing more research on it will help, but it kind of just gets you to think about, okay, well, if I am lacking in this kind of courage, maybe what I need to do is try and take steps to build that courage. Maybe that's something that's going to help me. I know in business, having that intellectual courage is definitely huge. That one is definitely a big one to work on. But I found that for me, being emotionally courageous has also been something that I felt like was going to help me in my business because I tie feelings to a lot of things. So sometimes I would avoid taking a risk because I was afraid I would get hurt. I'd be like, my feelings would get hurt. So for example, I shared that me singing yesterday and I was like really afraid, being like, oh my God, if this doesn't, like, I'm going to be really hurt. I like singing. I never thought I was great at it, but I still like it. And it was one of those things that I didn't share for that reason. So just thinking of little things like that and little steps you can take to start to maybe build that resilience up, so to speak. I see Alexis shared, I think emotional and spiritual courage rank high. See that? Awesome. You want to talk about that a little bit? And we'll get to you, Stephanie, I promise. Going through.
I don't know what to talk about. Like, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I don't like mind getting hurt. I prefer to like get hurt than live with regret. So I think I'm pretty high with that. And then spiritual. It seemed right.
Yeah,
I'm
I mean,
open-minded.
always
but
works. And then the physical courage, yeah, that's the one. It's like, I don't want to get hurt.
I like it. I don't like the dark. I sleep with a nightlight on. 25 years old.
Me too. Don't worry, I can relate to that.
I don't. It ain't the business. And then what was like the other one?
Oh,
that's why I.
no, you're totally fine. You're totally fine.
Yeah.
There was like, yeah, there are other, you don't have to rank all of them right now. It's more of just a thought exercise to kind of like think about which ones resonate most with you. Stephanie, I'd love to hear what your thoughts were on it.
For me, I would definitely rank intellectual courage as my first one, mainly because I do experience kind of that expert imposter syndrome. So I always try to learn as much as possible. And it's so easy for me in my business to like invest in like courses just so that I can keep on learning. And it's like, you know, so that's why intellectual courage is like the highest for me, because like I always want to keep on learning, I always want to expand my knowledge, but it can sometimes hold me back because I have all this knowledge but I'm not applying it. So it's like, yeah.
So what's happening is there's another fear that's kind of playing a part into that, because you have this courage of being like, I'm going to keep learning, like I am open to being wrong, teach me the things. But then there's something else that's holding you back from actually doing something with it. So if it's if you're tying it into that expert imposter syndrome, that usually ties into the lack of that whole social courage thing of being being judged by other people, of not being as good as them. It usually ties into kind of that piece of it. I think a lot of us struggle with that. Not everyone, but a lot of us.
Yeah, and actually, like my social courage, I put it as number 4. So it's like kind of up there, but not really.
Still,
because
yeah.
So it's like, it's not that I'm scared. Yeah, I'm scared of like letting people down, and I think that is the whole reason why I like to keep on learning. So I like decrease the possibility of like letting them down, especially like as an engagement lead generation VA. I don't like I feel like there's so much pressure around me, like trying to like create those genuine relationships and actually like get my clients. So it's just like if I don't do that, I feel like all my work was like nothing, and like I had to keep on learning more and like creating new strategies, all that.
Mhm. Well, I mean, yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, it's also we're in a very social industry. So it's kind of hard to not be afraid of people not liking you or not liking what you
Yeah.
do. Or not, like, I mean, it's one of those industries where it's like, well, if no one likes me, why would they work with me? And then I won't have clients, right? um, so I yeah, I completely understand, and I understand the obviously the fear, which I find it interesting. You and Kimmy said you put it at 4, the social one, which again, these are all different levels. Like we all have different levels of different things. So it's not like everyone who's at 4 is at the same level of courage. I want to make that very clear as well.
Yeah.
I know. So let me I'm going to share my screen again just to kind of get back to the types again. Go back to social. Go back. Come on, you can do this, computer. I believe in you. And because we're in industry, and this is why this one ties really well into entrepreneurship, because we're in an industry that is almost, especially on Instagram, where it's almost banked entirely on popularity. It's like, can I be as popular as this other person who's doing the same thing as me? So then we tie things into numbers, right? Because on Instagram, the popularity has to do with numbers. So, or maybe you're afraid of someone calling you out as not being knowledgeable in something. I've definitely worked with VAs who have avoided posting because they were afraid that the thing they posted wasn't going to be completely accurate, or it's like doesn't get the full story across, or someone's not going to agree with this, or they had things that they knew about social media, for example, or about admin, but they were too afraid to share it because they were afraid of, and that has to do with the intellectual courage too, the being wrong. That ties into that. Everything ties into each other. Isn't that fun? But then these two tie together really well because the fear of being wrong then ties into the fear of that wrongness in this industry excluding you from everyone else, the unpopularity. When I know that we all want clients, I think something really important to think about is what kind of clients you want. Do you want, for example, I've been sharing a lot of unpopular opinions recently just to try and because I learned from my current clients that they liked that I did that. So I was like, well, I'm going to do it more. And I definitely had people that were commenting and responding, not agreeing with them, which was fine because my intellectual courage happens to be high. I don't mind if people disagree. I don't mind having discussions with them. But that said, I know sometimes we can kind of be afraid that, okay, if I do something wrong, if I, start working with someone and I don't get them results they want, if I, if I say something that they don't like, whatever that might be, then I'm not gonna be able to get clients anymore because I won't have the proof. Like I'm not good enough yet. And I know that that's like kind of a big fear, especially on Instagram. Everyone talks to each other. Most people seem to know each other in some way. But this part of this kind of courage is that ability to stand alone, because ideally you want to work with people who believe in the things that you believe. So if you're holding back on saying something that maybe you think is important to you, you would ideally like to work with someone who also subscribes to that, right? Or if you're a social media manager and you share an unpopular social media opinion, like, hey guys, stop cold DMing, which I say that's unpopular to some people, it actually is. Or hey, you know what? Using hashtags doesn't work. Like, what if I've seen people post that. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I've seen people post that. Wouldn't you, like, if you believe that and if you didn't think hashtags were the way to go, wouldn't you want to work with someone who also agreed with that? Paulina, I see you raised your hand. Sorry, it took me a while to notice. Oh, yeah, you're good. You're good. Oh, you're not.
I swear I need to make that into a t-shirt, especially being like a teacher on Zoom. I need a t-shirt that says I was on mute or something. But so I have a couple thoughts here that that you pointed out, and something kind of comes to mind, and it's kind of like just spitballing, so feel free to like, you know, veer it back on track if it kind of doesn't make sense. But I think that like I see a connectedness between I would say emotional, social, moral, and spiritual. I feel like they all kind of go hand in hand. Intellectual too, but I feel like, okay, so intellectual is more like an interior kind of like need to overcome pride, essentially, of like, okay, am I willing to let go of the beliefs that I have, or at least kind of put them on the back burner in order to like, you know, make sure that I find what is most true. Whereas everything else, like emotional, moral, spiritual, and social, are all really tied to the social in a way. So it's like, for me personally, like emotional was on the bottom. So I'm like, how can I, okay, if, for example, since moral it ranks a little bit higher for me, but moral is still tied to social, then okay, if moral isn't so hard for me, but social is, like, what's working for me in like the moral courage arena that I can try and like bring into the other arenas that maybe aren't as high, you know?
Yep. That it's that, because all of these really do tie into each other, because like here's the thing, right? When we take action, we're taking action on multiple thoughts and ideas, right? Like, it's not just on one thing usually. It's on multiple things. So when I'm, for example, when you're making let's just say when you're making a post to Instagram, a really simple action, you're taking into account how you think people are going to react, but you're also taking into account how you might feel about it, but you're also taking into account the thought that you're sharing, and maybe the ability, like, you know, the fact that you might be wrong about it, but you're also like, there's a lot of stuff going into this. So this is why we're kind of going through all the types of courage too, because you're going to find that there are some pieces of life where you're like, well, I don't care about what others think there, but why is it I care about what others think here?
Exactly. And not only that, but it also gives you the ability to kind of recognize like the strengths that are working for you in that area and be like, oh, well, that is actually a strength that applies here. And then it kind of helps the strengths overweigh the fears.
Exactly.
That's not a word, but
I know. We know what you
like,
mean.
For example, like you said, that the unpopular opinions, like, yeah, unpopular opinions are scary because it's like, what if it's an unpopular opinion that's really going to upset some people? It's like, but you know what? The positive side of that is you're creating a lot of engagement. And that's gonna, like, you know, the people who aren't necessarily gonna disagree with you, that's gonna bring their eyes to you, and like, you know.
You're gonna notice there's a lot of people who don't care about sharing unpopular. And the funny thing is, I say unpopular opinions, which is a very lack of social courage thing to do. Because the people who have a lot of social courage, and there are people out there, you can see them, they're just like, I am me, this is me, I do what I want. And we can sometimes maybe, like, I know, you know, some of us can look at them and because they have people around them, it can be like, well, if I do this, then I'd just be excluded. But you see those people do that, and you know, they don't look at those opinions as unpopular opinions. That's not how they're often seeing it. They're not seeing it like that. It's like, no, it's my opinion. It's my thought. Like, what do you mean unpopular? I don't care. It could be popular, it could be unpopular, it could be this, it could be that, whatever, it's mine. A lot of these courages often have to do with you again, like it's you personally, your, you know, and something you'll find is usually experiences will dictate a lot of this. So for example, if you've been injured or hurt in some physical capacity, it's probably going to hurt your physical courage. It's just how it works, unfortunately. Just based on experience, versus, you know, kids don't care because they don't have the experience of having to ever be scared of that yet. Until they do get it. When I was 9, I hit my head on an exercise bicycle. I have a lovely little scar to prove it. Like, it was really nasty. But I know that I haven't touched an exercise bicycle since then. To be fair, it wasn't while riding one, it was while being dumb on one. So anyway, but yeah, so usually a lot of this does come from experience. So one of the best things you can do, if you're like wondering, why is it that maybe I'm scared in this way and not scared in this way? Why is it that I have this kind of courage and not this? just looking back at your own experiences. So I know the social courage one often comes from something usually in school or maybe in your family. And school, unfortunately, has dictated a lot of the social courage piece of it. So if in school you found that you tried really, really hard to blend in, you wanted to follow the trends, you wanted to be liked by people, so that's why you did those things, that can kind of start to lower your social courage more and more. You see in this, at least in my middle school experience, I remember, we went to elementary school, no one cared. And then middle school came around, all of a sudden the social hierarchy started becoming a thing. And some people didn't give a fuck. Some people didn't care and just kept doing their own thing. And some people cared a lot. And some turned into bullies, and some became the ones who were bullied, and some got hurt from friends who were no longer their friends anymore. And that has kind of dictated, their courage going forward. Because unfortunately, like, being hurt and, using that courage and getting hurt in some way can ping it down. Again, it's the risk you take. That's why this is courage. You're taking a risk either way. But yeah, I suppose Tiana said I didn't get to read this. My intellectual courage bounces around. Sometimes it's high. So yeah. Well, looking at all of this, there's going to be pieces that you find, like, sometimes you're like, yes, I can do this. I know there are lots of times, like when it comes to me getting dressed up in random costumes and we're running around town or cities or whatever, I don't care. That is where my social courage does not care. Like, that is where, and there's reasons for that as well, because I've now had good experiences with doing so. So that's been built up. Kind of like also my social courage when it comes to running events like this has been built over time, because I remember the first time I did it, I was freaking out. I didn't get a wink of sleep before my first October, because I was like, what if they don't like me? What if they hate me? What if no one shows up? So, and one of the things you risk when you do an event like this is no one showing up, like one person showing up. Anyway, anyone else have any thoughts that they'd like to share on all of that? I know that's a kind of an interesting exercise to think about. Good, ready to move on? Thumbs up. Yay, okay, just awesome. Okay, let's move along. We're gonna get back into some kind of journaling-ish things. So fears and motivations. So we kind of touched on this, and you've probably been thinking about this throughout, but obviously this is a courage workshop. So the idea is that we want to be able to get over these big fears. So one of the big things I'd love for you to kind of think about right now, journal on, whatever that is what is the thing that you fear most? Start surface level and you can dig deeper. So I keep asking myself why. So for example, I fear failure. Why? Because I'm afraid of disappointing others. Why? Because I don't want to be left alone, and I'm afraid if I disappoint people, they'll give up on me. So, it's one of those kind of digging deeper things where it's like, it's not the failure you're afraid of, it's the, I'm afraid that I'll be left alone if I fail. So I'd love for you guys to kind of do this exercise. It doesn't have to be just one fear. You can do it with multiple, but kind of start with one. And I'll give you guys a minute to maybe think about it, and then we'll see if anyone wants to share. Gonna give 30 more seconds for that. Obviously, you can keep doing this on your own time. Does anyone want to share what they've come up with so far? I know it's a very quick minute. Someone's in the chat. Let me go see. Oh, you're all good. I know it's tough when you have kids. No problem at all, and we'll see you soon. Would anyone else, would anyone like to share what they've come up? You don't have to, again, if you're not comfortable doing so, but just like to see if anyone has one they would like to share. Oh, Stephanie.
I can go
All
first
right,
again.
all right.
One thing that I've noticed is that I fear being shy on camera because like I saw like someone talk about it, that if you don't show confidence or if you feel nervous in front of camera, your ideal client won't be attracted to you.
Oh, okay. So you're afraid if you show up on camera, you're going to look shy and therefore they won't want to work with you.
Oh, well, it's like, okay, so for me, being confident on camera was a big thing. And sometimes whenever I have to pitch like for my services, like on stories, that is the part where I stumble the most in my words. So because I heard someone say if you stumble in words or if you like are seen as shy, like no one's going to pay attention to you. So every time I feel like it creates even more fear to like if to like pitch on stories, because like I'm already shy and it like I don't want to show it, but it's like I'm still facing that fear, if that makes sense.
But you're still doing it. Like you're still going for it and doing it anyway. So that's awesome. Like at least it's not stopping you from doing it. So thank you so much for sharing. That's an interesting one that I forget. Sometimes I forget I've been doing YouTube for several years. I kind of sometimes forget about the camera thing. But I will say I understand about the pitching on camera though, because even on YouTube before, when it was just telling people to like the video and subscribe, or when you're just on stories and you're giving a mini training and then you have to at the end be like pitch something, that is kind of scarier than just the giving of the information or whatever you were doing in that particular video. So I completely I understand that. I can relate to that. And you will probably notice this later in this particular you probably notice it later in this particular workshop. Anyway, anyone else want to share what they came up with? Again, don't have to, but Kimmy?
So right now, my biggest fear is that I won't be able to find clients. And that's because I'm concerned that I'll never be able to support myself in the way that's needed, because I absolutely have to have medical care or I'll end up in a bad place again that I never want to end up again. So that's where I'm at.
So basically it's the fear of not being able to have your basic needs covered. That's the
Yeah.
That's the basic thing right now. Okay, that makes complete sense. First of all, that is a very, very valid fear that I think we can all relate to. You probably heard of that. They call it like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and that's like the very, very basic being like food, shelter, like everything's like shelter, water, medical stuff, like all that basic stuff that you kind of all need before you could even get to like feeling fulfilled in your life. But yeah, that makes complete sense. Would anyone else like to share as well? No? Okay, Tiana.
So I also said failure, but specifically in my business, not having or finding enough clients to make it sustainable. And then the why is because that would mean that my imposter syndrome is right. And that all the people who I guess would have low intellectual courage, like all the people who are so like I guess, traditional and so like stuck in their ways. Like all the people who say, oh, you can't really do that. It's not realistic. It's, you know, it's a pyramid scheme. Like I know people like that. And like, no. But like that would mean that they're right, essentially. So yeah.
Okay, that makes, well, I see, it wouldn't mean that they're right because someone's still succeeding in it,
Yes.
regardless. So there is that. They will never be right because they aren't anyway. So anyway, no, I think that is also a very, very valid fear. I like the way that you mentioned that it would mean that your imposter syndrome is right, your inner voice is right, because your inner voice is clearly built off of what all those other people have been saying to you.
Mhm.
And you're really trying to push past it, but the last thing you want is for it to be like, I told you so.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like the worst thing. Whenever I even say that out loud, I'm like, no, I don't want to hear that. But part of intellectual courage is, it's not just, it's also the, being open to being wrong about something like this as well. I know that's a kind of scary thing to understand. But you're kind of going into this knowing that there is a risk that you are wrong about this being right for you. Again, I know that's scary. I know that's really scary, but you're still, that doesn't mean that you can't believe that you can do this, because obviously I do believe that you can do this, and you can believe that. It's just the openness. So for me, I have, obviously I believe that this is a business that I can run. But I have also had to accept and also understand that, 5 years down the line, I might not be doing this anymore. I might go back to a job and, or maybe I go find a better job. Maybe another door opens up that's different than this. That's not this, but I still want to do it. And it's being open to that possibility as well, open to something that's better as well. Even though you might not know that now. So again, I know that's kind of scary to understand, but this is the risk we take when we go into something like this. Of course, I still believe that you're going to be just fine. I mean, people need organization, but this is all about courage. I think Stacy is raising her hand.
Well, for me is I fear the most not being productive as everyone else. Why? Because care about people opinions, I think, or because of my imposter syndrome. Sometimes, like not every day. Also because of my mental health. I have depression, and sometimes it's so hard just to wake up and have like my part-time job, my business, my personal life, and like all of this business. When I came here, like it was everything so bright and so beautiful, and then it turns like um I have like different phases, like it was overwhelming, and then I take different decisions. I set like boundaries for me, and now it's going good. But like sometimes I struggle with feeling not being so productive.
No, that makes complete. So I can see that you're kind of fearing what depression is doing to you. Like you're not able to. So some will put it right. Depression is something that I don't. If anyone is open to sharing whether they also struggle with depression, hello. Yeah, it is a struggle. I also struggle with anxiety, which kind of can have some similar effects in some ways. But obviously it takes a toll on a lot of things in our life, and productivity is one of the biggest ones, especially in a world where I'm sure you've probably grown up with a family that's just like, oh, make sure you do this chore, make sure you do your laundry, make sure you brush your teeth, make sure you go to school, and there's all these things that you're expected to do, and you feel like when you're not doing things the way they expect, you're like, well, what's wrong with me? Even though you have an explanation for it, it's hard to explain to them that's the problem, right? So it kind of seems like the fear is stemming from, why this is all happening. But maybe possibly you're afraid that others don't understand it. Like maybe the family around you doesn't understand why you can't be productive a certain day, or maybe other people outside of you, you're just like, they're doing so much better than me, I wish I could be like them. Something like that. Does that relate? Yeah. That whole comparison thing, don't we love it? Anything you want to add to all that?
Well, I just want to say like it's something like that because I think like depression is whole like I'm struggling with imposter syndrome, but signs after my business signs. Like I finished high school and it's like the whole business thing, my personal life, also like I think it's fair to the result that it's gonna give me. Like you said, like maybe this is not for me, or maybe it is. I don't know, but we need to accept the fact that we all change. Like maybe in the future, I will not going to do this anymore because I like another thing, and that's okay.
Yeah. By the way, I want to make sure everyone understands that starting, the fact that you've all started your own business and actually taken steps to do it is awesome. It's like really brave and really, really awesome because there's a lot of people out there who wanted to and have not. You see it a lot of times, especially in like the boomer and the Gen X population who've kind of grown up now. And I'm talking about generation stuff. Paulina makes a lot of really funny TikToks about it, so I highly recommend checking that out. But with those populations who grew up in a very, very traditional way, and I've talked to my father, who constantly talks about how much he wishes he had done something differently. And even, my mom, who is like very much a go-getter, and she's still on her way to getting the CEO position she wanted. But I remember she one time sat me down, and I didn't even think of it this way. She was like, I'm that kind of person. I'm speaking as her. She was like, I'm that kind of person that a lot of people tell me they look up to me, but right now I'm looking up to you because you're doing the thing that I was too afraid to do. Which I thought was really cool of her to say, first of all. And second of all, just kind of to give you perspective of a lot of these people out there that you see who maybe have always wanted to do the thing that you're doing. So that's really cool. And especially if you're struggling with other issues outside of it. So whether that's anxiety, anxiety, bipolar, I know Kimmy mentioned intermittent explosive disorder, which I know is a really tough one to handle. So kudos to you for really trying to, going through with this and being like, I'm going to make this work. And I believe that you will. And then Stacey, with your depression as well, this all makes you like, it's super brave of you to be going forward with this. Now to keep it going, you just keep taking those, scary as it is, you keep taking those brave steps. And understanding on the intellectual courage side that even if it doesn't work out, that doesn't mean it's a failure of you. Doesn't mean you were the one who, like, it's a problem that you had. It just means that it wasn't a good path for you. So I just want everyone to understand that, and that there is a good path for you. And if you believe that this is it, then take those brave steps to do it. So how is everyone feeling so far? And we got about 30 minutes left. Feeling good? Feeling good? Awesome. I like the thumbs up. We like this. Let's keep going. See how much we can get through with this. If anyone wants to add anything at any point, by the way, again, we're all adults here. Feel free to interrupt me. I don't mind. Feel free to add in the chat, whatever you want. So the next question, and we don't have to all go through this again, but this is again more for your own thoughts, is what do you want more than anything? because I know we just talked about fears, we talked about things that were scaring us, all of that good stuff, but there's something that's keeping us going. So the fact we even started these businesses in the first place, despite the fears, often means the motivation perhaps is stronger than the fear. So I'm curious as to what you want more than anything. So this is just an example. I want to work for myself so I can have the freedom to, and I can't read that because you guys are blocking it in my little corner, freedom to do what I want. Why? Because I hate being tied down and unable to even go to just a doctor's appointment without permission. I used to be so afraid to just ask to go to a doctor's appointment when I was in a 9 to 5 because I just felt like I was asking for too much. I didn't want to have to handle that anymore. So why is
I,
that? Yep.
whenever I was working in a retail job, I actually asked for a week off because I was gonna go to dentist. I was gonna get like my general exam, and they denied it. And I was like, "Are you serious? Like, I'm gonna go like for my health." And they were like, "No." And I was like, "Okay." And that's when I decided to quit.
I find it, yeah, this is smart of you. I find it ridiculous that that companies can even deny your time off requests. It shouldn't matter why you're taking time off, frankly.
Yeah.
Like that's just my opinion, but yeah, the corporate world, there's so much they can get away with because people are so tied to being like, well, you got to keep your job no matter what. Anyway, but yeah, so just kind of figuring out what the motivation is and seeing, and the important thing is to see if a motivation is maybe tied to a fear as well, because that can happen. So when I go through this one, for example, I want to work myself so I can have the freedom to do what I want. And part of the reason for that is because I don't like asking people to have to do things. And I'm afraid of asking for too much. So working for myself, I don't have to do that. So that's an interesting thing to recognize about myself, being like, oh, the only reason I actually don't, frankly, if I have to be completely honest, I don't mind doing admin work. I never did. I don't mind working for someone in some capacity or working with a group. I just didn't like how I couldn't do some things I wanted to do or take a day off when I needed to for mental health, because that happened a lot. You know, even if I could have technically asked it off, I hated the feeling of doing that. I also hated the feeling of quitting jobs. That made me so anxious for weeks. So again, but there will be motivations that are obviously just motivations, but it's interesting to find if you have any motivations that are tied into fears. So this is a good exercise for that. Does anyone want to share a motivation that they have or something that's really driving them? You don't have to go through the whole process, just like base level. Something fun.
Mine is exactly the same. I just don't want to have to work for someone else. Like I want to be my own boss. I want to have my own schedule and take time off when I want. And like, if one day I decide to not start working until noon, I want to be able to do that. Like,
yeah. I also love one of the other reasons I want to work for myself is because, to be completely honest, I don't like the way most people do things. I find it very inefficient. So I wanted to make my own systems and be like, I don't have to deal with bosses who don't know what they're talking about.
That's literally how I was at my last job. My boss was so incompetent. So I ended up doing her work for her. And then she'd come in and check on me and be like, yeah, good job. Keep going. I'm like, yeah, I'm doing your job. You're welcome. And then I quit. So
Good for you. Good for you. Anyone else want to share a motivation? Fun stuff. Paulina, since you didn't get to share in the last one.
I really just want to make enough money to be able to live like on my own and get out of my parents' house. Because I don't, hopefully I'll be able to see you guys all again at some point, but just to give a little bit of backstory, not really, okay, keep it short, promise.
You have to apologize.
So I live with my parents. Part of the reason for that is that I'm in a wheelchair and like, not a caregiver, that's the word. And so affording like one privately, because I have a savings account, and if you have like a certain amount of money in your savings account, which is like barely above the poverty line, then you can't like get government assistance to help pay for a caregiver. It's kind of messed up, but so I need to be able to make enough money so that I can live on my own and pay for my own caregiver and not have to worry about following any government rules about that. And yeah, just live a life I mean, I want to have like a luxurious life like a lot of people do, I think, but I just also want like just the bare minimum. It's at the same time to be able to just live with myself. I don't know. Does
I
that
think
make
that's awesome. I think that makes total sense. And that is awesome. You want independence. Want to be like, I can live on my own.
exactly.
um,
That's my
which
motivation.
which I think there's also people on the other side that like they want, you know, I know like I've lived a very independent life myself. Um, so I sometimes kind of go the other way where I'm like, I want to be independent. Don't get me wrong, but I want to be able to rely on people. That's like a big motivation of mine to do certain. Like I want to be able to actually be able to ask people for help and favors. 'Cause it's something I don't like doing. um, but I think that's great that like, you know, you're kind of just like, I know what I want. Like I want independence. This is why I'm doing this. Anyone else want to share their motivations and or anything like that? They're fun. These are the fun ones. Stacy.
Oh, for me, it's like working with people that I actually love working. Because I don't like to work with people are are always asking me or like giving me like not giving me days off and bosses. It's all about the freedom thing because I also hate quitting jobs every time I take a vacation. My family like they don't understand like different type of problems that I have.
Mhm.
That
And it was important. Like it's important to go see your like that's something that you probably value. That's like going to see my family is important.
and I try to like inspire people who is like me or who start like having mental health issues and um giving them like an advice or like motivation to coming up with new ideas or be going for it.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so proud of everyone. By the way, these are all great goals and we're going to have a lot of fun with them. Also, you don't be afraid to think big when you think of these motivations. Like, I want to run a gigantic convention, like a really big one for entrepreneurs or someone else. I used to be for YouTubers. Maybe we're going to see what it's going to be. We'll find out down the line. But I want to run a big convention. That is a huge motivation of mine for doing everything that I do. So we'll see how that plays out. But don't be afraid to think big. You can think big. You can be like, I want a giant $100 million mansion in the Beverly Hills. And I want to marry Harry Styles and live happily ever after. The end. You can think big. It's fine, guys. Dream big. Yeah, Harry Styles is pretty great. Who else agrees, by the way? Okay, good. I have my fangirl moments, okay?
Question.
Yeah.
Why is there this, I mean, is that from the imposter syndrome? Like, why is there this fear that a lot of us have of like dreaming big? It's like that we feel like we can't achieve that. Or
Yeah.
it's almost like there's like a shame too. It's like, oh, I'm not, like, I don't deserve to be that big.
Okay, well there's a little bit of it. So it's actually a very common thing in a lot of other countries that aren't the US. But it's brought over in a lot of our families. So this can play a part in your family too. I know in Sweden they actually have a name for it. I can never remember. It's like Jante or something. And it basically has something to do with be humble. Don't live a life that's too big. That's the essential principle of it, and there are a lot of people that subscribe to it, and that's fantastic. You don't have to live a gigantic fancy life. um but but sometimes what it can do is it can shame people who aim for something a little bit more than that, which is fine. I think you can aim for whatever you want, whatever level. If you just want to earn enough to sustain yourself and be perfectly fine, and that's all you need, great. You know? So that's the first thing. It usually comes from that whole societal thing, because we live in a society where people who sometimes make it farther, like they're like fewer and farther between, to be fair, right? So it seems like such a big stretch to do that, whether that's in terms of wealth, whether it's in terms of friendships, whether it's fame, whether it's something else. Those things aren't always tied together. They always seem like there aren't that many of them. So the idea of scarcity comes to mind, where it's like, well, there's only a few spots open, right? There's only a few spots open for someone to run a convention. There's only a few spots open for someone to earn $1 million. There's only a few spots open for someone to do this and that. And don't get me wrong, like I am still of the belief that like billionaires shouldn't exist, but that is my personal, there is still that, but I do believe that we can aspire to earn more if we want to. We can aspire to that if we want to. That is my personal belief on all of that. So I think some people tend to think small too, because it's kind of like setting the bar low. It's kind of like being like, if I can just do this, like, come on. Right? And some of it comes down to just basic needs, where you're like, it's really hard to dream big when you don't even have your basic needs covered, right? So I don't, if that's what you're struggling with, and I run into this too, where sometimes I forget about my big dreams because I'm just like, I just need money. Like, I need money so I can afford this bill. Okay. That's all I'm dreaming about right now. The dream is paying this bill. So that's not bad. That just has to do with needs. Once you get to that point, that's when you can start. Yeah. That's why it's not a bad thing. And for anyone else who struggles with this, if you're struggling with money and you find that that's feeding your fear about getting clients or whatever it might be, handle the money issue first. And that might mean getting a part-time job. That might mean something. And I know that's kind of scary, but the reason for that is that once you cover your basic needs, it's so much easier to go into, and I know time-wise it can be a struggle, I understand, but it can be easier to mentally go into some of these other things, and not feel that desperation. So I'm not saying you have to do that. It's just something to kind of think about, especially if your fear is just covering your bills. And it's not a bad thing. I've actually just gotten, and this wasn't for money, this was actually more of just to help my mom, but I just got a little side thing to help my mom's company out. And I'm realizing the money that's going to be coming in from it just makes me feel so much freer already. Being like, oh my God, I have extra money. I've never had that. I've never had extra money. So if that's something, like, obviously I pick it very carefully, but don't be afraid to do that. Like, to not do that just because you'd be afraid it seems like you're failing is kind of like pride. It's kind of a pride thing. That whole pride thing. Okay, 20 minutes left. Awesome. Let's keep going real quick. You guys have the chat for questions as well. I wanted to share this slide, especially. This is one of my favorite things to kind of think about as well now. It's that kind of, I guess, dichotomy between fear, courage, and confidence, because courage and confidence are not exactly the same thing. Courage leads into confidence eventually. So a fearful person is going to be, I have a plan B just in case plan A doesn't work out, right? By the way, getting a part-time job does not mean it's a plan B. That's possibly part of your plan. That's fine. But having a full-time job that is your backup is a plan B. That's kind of a different thing. So I have a plan B just in case plan A doesn't work out. A courageous person, what plan B? Plan A is going to work out. So this is the person that has the courage and is like, I don't have a plan B. What's a plan B? What is that? That was me moving to LA. And a confident person is, I don't need a plan B because I know plan A will work out. So a confidence comes from the clarity. A courageous person is going in blind, usually, to an extent. A confident person isn't going in blind. They know. That's the difference. So the interesting thing is to kind of consider where you think you stand with your business. Are you on the fearful side where you have a plan B just in case? Again, I'm not shaming you. You have a plan B, but it is they're understanding that the reason you have a plan B is that fear. Or built-in conditioning to have that fear from the people around you. Are you in the courageous zone where you're like, I don't have a plan B, but it's going to work out? Or are you in the confidence zone where you actually have clarity that, plan A is going to work? Feel free to put that in the chat because I am going to continue, but think about this because it is an interesting thing to understand where you're at. So when we talk about overcoming fear, oh, did someone unmute themselves? Thought I heard that. Anyway, so to overcome fear, you really, and I'm not going to be giving specific strategies because there's a reason why. You can't just face fear the way everyone else does it. So, for example, you don't have to quit your full-time job or spend a ton of money you don't have or confront people who have wronged you in some way just because other people did that. Everyone's going to face their fears in their own ways. I think someone posted something in the chat. I think I'm on my way to being confident in my business. Yes, you are, Tiana. We've been working on that pretty heavily. We're going to get there. Yeah, so I know that like everyone will talk about being brave as quitting your job or spending that money, or, investing or, confronting people. You don't have to do those exact things. There are other steps you can take. So to kind of get there, ask yourselves, in what ways are you brave? So in what ways do you have courage? And that can tie into the types of courage if you want. That was more of just a thought exercise. But consider what ways you're brave, like what brave steps you usually take, how you are, how you have courage. In what ways are you confident? So what things are you actually confident about? What are the things that you not only believe you can do, maybe, but have something to back it up usually? What motivates you to take risks? So when you have taken risks, what has motivated you to do it? And that's an important one to consider because that might be a motivation you need to lean into, possibly. And then where are you not brave? Where do you lack courage? And how does it affect your life? So I'm giving kind of an example in terms of social courage. I'm going to be making a post about this tomorrow, so you guys will be able to see this. There was once a time when I stole one of my best friend's crushes because I was too afraid to tell her that I liked him as well. Not a good thing. This was a very long time ago, by the way. This was a good 12 years ago now, I think. 11? I don't know. It's been a while. High school. Wow. But yeah, I remember I was too afraid to tell her. So well, basically what I did was I snuck behind her back to hang out with him, being like, oh, I'm just gonna see what happens. And then he asked me out to the homecoming dance. And I told her that he did that. And I told her that I said no, but in my head, I knew I was putting her in an uncomfortable position to say, oh, it's fine. I knew that. I knew I was doing that. And that was a very cowardly thing to do, by the way. No one do that ever. But understanding that like I sometimes struggle to tell people how I really feel or what I really think occasionally. Or at least I used to. It's a little better now. It's much better now, actually. But understanding where you lack courage and how it affects your life and how it affects how you feel and how you interact with other people and all of that. So that was definitely me. I was afraid of being ostracized and I managed to lose a friendship because of it. So worst case scenario there. And then how can you use your unique courage and confidence that you identified to overcome some of these fears or to get away from the way that maybe your lack of courage or things you're scared of have affected your life. So I think someone else was in the chat. Let me see if it'll pop up. Yeah, it's kind of hilarious now. It was not it's not very hilarious at the time. It was also like really dumb because I didn't like him. I don't really like him anymore. Very bad person, and she's amazing. So like, what was I doing? In any case, lessons you learn, but just start to think of things like that maybe happened in your life that you're like, if I had only had the courage to do X, Y, Z. Because the worst feeling, and maybe y'all can attest to this, is if only I had. Like, one of the worst feelings is sitting there being like, if only I had done this. And half the time it comes down to some type of courage. If only I had, told them what I really thought. If only I had, like, I also in high school, I watched someone get beat up in front of me, which to be fair, I should not have like run up to stop it. I was a small person. I didn't know what to do. I just stood there completely frozen. Like, what do I do? And he ended up walking off, and I could have come up and like offered to console him, offered to take him to the nurse's office, offered to something. I didn't. And I remember I always look back at that moment and being like, if only I had just like extended a hand, worst feelings ever. You never want to be in a position where you're like, if only I had done that thing. Which is why we're talking about this in the first place, because you do not want to live a life that you look back on and be like, I regret that. Bad. Someone else put something in the chat. Does having courage also tie in with intuition? I think it can. Stop sharing for just a moment. I think it can tie into intuition. And the reason, and it really kind of depends, right? Because your gut feeling, your intuition, like if it's something that you learn is actually a good thing. Because I think some of us, and I know Stephanie, you recently had a whole awakening with your intuition. Do you want to talk about that real quick, by the way? Actually, because it's really interesting.
Yeah, so last Sunday I was in my bed. Me and my boyfriend had just finished. I don't know if you can hear me. Me and my boyfriend had just finished showering and we stayed in our bed. I was on TikTok and he was like on his phone. And then he asked me, he was like, hey, do you want to go to IHOP? Because that's what we decided in the morning. It was like around 2 when he asked me. And I was like, no, it's a little bit late. And when he asked me, do you want to go to IHOP? I had like this feeling where I dissociated with my body, and I was no longer in touch with my body. And I was learning about mental health and dissociation disorder. And I was like, that can't be happening to me because I haven't had like that kind of trauma that usually is related to dissociation. So I was like, this can't be happening to me. So I ignored it. And we ended up going to a buffet after like a few minutes of talking back and forth. And on our way back, his mom calls us saying that there's smoke coming out of the house and the bathroom burned down. And right before we left, like I didn't want to go anywhere. I was like, no, you know what? I'm no longer hungry. But he did. He eventually was like, let's go to the buffet. We have to eat. So yeah. And like that woke up my intuition because like when I dissociated with my body, it was like I was talking to my higher self, if you're into spirituality. And it really woke up like I've been pushing away on my intuition because of what other people have told me, saying that it wasn't real, or like they have been telling me that I take life too serious.
You're thinking too much.
Yeah,
that's a big one. Everyone always says, "Oh, you're thinking too much."
Yeah, so it's like I push myself away from my intuition. So yeah.
I mean, that especially because everyone always wants concrete evidence for things. That's like a big thing. You'll constantly be like people who just want concrete evidence for something, which I mean, I can understand in many contexts, but I think there does come a point where, personally, your intuition is really important to listen to. And I think it is a brave thing to listen to your intuition. Maybe that's another type of courage that could be added on there that was not included. Some sort of intuition courage or something. I don't know if it's connected or tied in, but I feel like it could be separate, because I think there's definitely a lot of courage in believing the feelings and thoughts that you're having in any given moment, like the gut feeling that you have that often can come across as physical, but doesn't have to. So I think I thought that was really cool, because there is like, and it's so easy to be afraid to listen to it because you're just like, yeah, but it's not tied into reality. I'm thinking too much. Oh, I'm just, I'm being dramatic, which are excuses that we make for ignoring stuff like that. But now and I know you said that kind of got you to think a lot about listening more to your intuition. And I think Kimmy just said she had a similar experience with intuition. Yeah. I don't know if anyone else has. Have you guys also had a similar experience with your intuition in that way? Yeah, I love listening to my gut feeling, no matter what it's telling me at the time. And I think that is a type of courage. I really do think it is. I think I almost frankly think it's a whole separate type of courage. So thank you for sharing that. Let's continue this particular conversation. So overcoming fears, one of the big pieces that tends, and this actually ties in really well to what we were just talking about, the whole idea of having proof. One of the big pieces that tends to trip people up are this idea of being definite, being sure, being clear. So we wait until we have those things so that we can take risks, so that we can overcome fears. Problem is, that's not how it works usually. So, and I'll be showing you a visual in just a moment to kind of show you how this works. But in between courage and confidence is clarity. So the courage has to come first before the clarity. Otherwise, you're already confident. You've already, you don't need all that. You don't need the courage to do something because you already know it's going to be fine, right? That's not courage. That's confidence. So what usually happens is we'll wait until we're sure in some way. We'll wait for some sort of sign. We'll wait until we're 100% ready, whatever that might be. But that's just simply not how courage works. And that attitude is what is going to feed that cowardice and fear, because your fear is going to use that attitude against you. Your fear is going to be like, oh, well, you're not sure yet. You're never going to be sure. Like that fear is going to constantly feed on that attitude that you have, that like, oh, I'm not ready yet. And it's going to keep saying that, even if you technically are ready. Someone's in the chat again. It doesn't pop up for me when I'm sharing things. So note to self, there's no such thing as a sure thing. Yes, that's very intellectual couragey. It really is. You need to get that tattooed. Yes, you do. We should all get this tattooed. So what did I miss over here? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so, and you'll see this in a lot of people, that people who tend to fall into their fear and tend to let fear rule their life tend to focus a lot on what's right and just. They'll constantly be focusing on things that are correct. Like, what is the correct way? What has proof? Things that are very solid in life that they can that they can follow without feeling like it's going to confuse or overwhelm them. Kind of simplistic in a way. And again, truth is that there's no guarantee that we'll ever be sure enough in anything to feel confident. And that ties into a lot of those courages. That's kind of the point, right? The risk you take is that you're wrong, whether it's emotionally, physically, intellectually, all of that. The risk you take is that you're wrong, or that you're never going to know. And that is just kind of the truth in life. Let's be real. So confidence will often only come after you've taken a risk that has proven beneficial to you. Sometimes you'll take a risk, it'll fail. You'll take another risk, it'll work, and you'll be like, that's how this is supposed to go. But that's how you get confidence. Confidence often comes from proof. That's different than arrogance. Arrogance does not. Two different things. And courage is often what comes before having that clarity. So now you guys can kind of understand the language that I'm using here personally. So when it comes to taking risks in areas where maybe you are afraid or you're lacking courage, what you might need to do is focus not on making a decision that you feel confident in, but a decision that's brave and courageous. And that can seem scary, but that's the point. Because if you're just waiting to be confident, that time often never comes for the things you're most scared about. So if you've ever done something that has been particularly scary, so for example, for me, telling one of my ex-roommates that I didn't want to be roommates anymore, there was no good time to do that. Absolutely no good time to do that. But you just had to go do it. Just had to say it and then have that discussion, and it was messy and it was ugly and it wasn't fun. But there was at no point I was going to be confident in that decision. But at least I don't regret it. There's a difference. So I would love for you all to kind of think, brainstorm right now, and maybe share what's kind of the next brave step that you can take right now. So going back into the things that you're really, really scared about. And these do not have to be huge steps. But think right now about what the next big or small brave step you can take is for you personally, for the things that you fear, for the things that you lack courage in. So some examples in your business might be pitching your offer to someone, like just going in and just being like, I'm going to pitch this person. I've been afraid to do it. I'm going to go do it now. So maybe that's one of the things. Posting something potentially controversial that you believe in. Maybe that's the next brave step that you can take. Being honest with a team member, a friend, a business acquaintance, whatever that might be. Just being upfront with them about something you haven't been upfront about, or about something that's been bothering you. or pivoting your business entirely to business entirely to focus on something that you truly enjoy. Maybe realizing this isn't what I want and pivoting it entirely, which is scary. I can say from experience. So these are examples, but I would love you to kind of think on your own. And this could be personally, and it could be in business as well. But ideally, you'll do it for both. Would anyone like to share some ideas they have that they might do?
For me, it'll be pitching my offer soon, as you know. So
That's
yeah.
true. Are you going to be pitching it in the DMs too?
I hope so. I think I can do that.
I know that's scary. I know that's scary. We're going to start with with not doing that, and then we'll go there.
My goal is to be able to do that comfortably. So yeah.
And to be fair, like, especially when you're when you have a mindset of sales, when you're in the kind of the desperation mindset, pitching's always uncomfortable because you always kind of go in thinking of sales. When you're not as worried about the outcome, which will eventually come, I promise, then it's less scary because you're just kind of like, hey, I'm doing this thing. Hope you can join.
Yeah.
And that's not scary, but that's only when you get to that point of finally being like, I don't need this person to join. I just would like them to.
Yeah.
And then there's a difference in that attitude. And it comes across differently because neediness people shy away from, but someone wanting you, that's fun. That's cool. Anyone else want to share a brave step they're thinking of taking? Stephanie? Just calling people's names out?
Okay, yeah, for me it would definitely be pitching in the DMs. I struggle with it because I am so scared of ruining the relationship, and also like I don't want it to like just be like, hey, do you want to work with me? And it's like it's always tricky when it comes to like, because I'm all about being genuine, and like you mentioned, when it comes to pitching, you're mostly thinking about the sale. So with the advice that you gave was the go with it without an expectation, like it can actually like sound more genuine. Yeah.
And you never know if someone actually needs you, right? Like you never know if someone's like, you know what, yeah, let's talk. And I like to always put in the like, there's no pressure to get on a call with me, like if you want to come chat with me. Like I'm not gonna push you into it. I just want to see if it's something that would help us both, and if not, that's fine. Because you also don't know, and I know we're all starting our businesses, so you're not seeing this yet. You don't know who's going to come to you like 3 months, 6 months, even a year or two down the line and be like, okay, I'm ready now. I definitely, one of my current mastermind clients I've been talking to since last May, and she signed up a couple months ago. I didn't even think she would, but she did. So you really don't know. I swear. Awesome. Well, if anyone else wants to share, you can share in the chat. By the way, I know it's 2. If anyone needs to pop off, you're more than welcome to. I have a couple more things I'd like to talk about when we get to the end. So if you want to stick around for a little bit longer, we'll do that. But definitely once you go through all those other journal prompts, I recommend doing those first. Brainstorm your next brave step that you can take. And it can be small, but make it something that scares you. That's the point, right? It's got to be something that makes you like, oh, feels a little uncomfortable. So this is kind of the framework I was talking about before. To be visible to people authentically, which basically means to build your community, your people, right? And that's why I threw authentic in there. It's not just being visible to people, it's being authentically visible to the people that matter. It comes from confidence. So you have to have confidence to get to that point. Confidence comes from clarity. So you have to be clear on something, whether that's having proof or just generally being like, I know exactly what to do. That's where confidence comes from, right? That makes sense. And clarity will often come from courage. Because in order to get that clarity, a lot of times you have to do things that scare you to find out what the right answer is, right? So one of the main steps in this is something like market research. And I know a lot of people who avoid that step because it's scary to go out and ask people. Like, even if it's something for free. It's scary to go out and ask people questions like that, right? And because of that, they get stuck on this step because they're too afraid to ask for the market research or too afraid to pitch in the DMs and see what's working for them, or too afraid to ask their clients what they really think about their program, or get like, you know, what could I do better in this? Too afraid to even ask that question. But having that will give you the clarity to give you the confidence to get you visible, which is what we all want to be. We all want to be authentically visible to people so they can come to us. Ideally, that would be great, right? So that's kind of the main framework. And I want you to think of it like this. So if you keep thinking about like, oh, I want to be confident, you have to go through these steps. You have to. And it also makes it simpler to look at it like that. Who's chatting? Someone's chatting. The chat's not popping up for me. Whoops. It probably will in a moment. So I was going to do a visioning exercise. We don't really have time for that, but I will have you all kind of just think about the kind of like in part of the clarity piece is being clear on your vision. And so that I wanted to make sure we talked about that briefly. And that includes clarity of where you were. So what you were doing before. So like my whole journey when I talked about being a YouTuber, admin assistant, all this other stuff, where were you? It could all the way back. Old actions. So what you did, understanding how that plays into where you're at. Because obviously that's important to understand. New actions. So what you're going to do, and then the vision where you're going. So being clear on every single step of this stuff is really important to the clarity piece. And I also always recommend going to people who knew you. Again, same with the whole like courage piece, like understanding how are others seeing this? Because someone's getting an outside perspective can really help you be like, oh, I did do that. I forgot that I did that. And I forgot that played a part in like who I am. So this is really, really important to understand. But as far as vision goes, that comes down to trying to think a little bit bigger, thinking about something as simple as like walking yourself through a dream day and what is included in that dream day, as detailed as you can get. So I keep imagining this one apartment in Denver that I saw one time that's like $4,000 a month. That I keep imagining that particular apartment, and I'm like, I'm living there. My office is in a separate room. It's got windows everywhere. I have mint candles. I have a jacuzzi bath, which is important to me. I want a jacuzzi bath. I like baths. Like I go out and like I can have spontaneous adventures with friends. There's nothing to do that day. I have a gigantic, like this is the kind of visioning I'm talking about, like thinking start of day to end of day, like what's going on, who are you seeing, who's included in this. And again, reason this, I know you hear about this all the time, but the reason this is important is because it dictates, well, what are you going to do to get there? So for me, obviously, included in my vision is I kind of need to get that vision. I need to have that income to afford said place, or to at least be able to find it somewhere else, wherever it might be. So I'm able to afford that particular place and wherever it might be, something like it. I need to be working for myself, because in order to live that dream life, I have to work for myself. That's just how it is for me. Okay, so I've now clarified that. And this can always change, but I always end my day with like, I have like this great like after party for the convention that evening. And there's like fireworks. I don't know why there's fireworks. They're not even great for the environment, but there's always fireworks in it. And there's like Harry Styles playing his music at the party. Yeah, Harry Styles is a part of it. So, and I have like all my friends and we're dancing because I love to dance. And I love martinis, so I'm holding a martini. Little things like that where I'm just like, in order to do that, I need my convention so I can hold my little after party for the convention. And it needs to be big enough so Harry Styles will come in. I know this all seems like really high level and like big picture, but you need to kind of think like that to kind of understand, well, what are the little steps I can take now to get there? Instead of what are the little steps I can get now to just get to this small little goal I've set, like this tiny one. Start with the big one, then move to the smaller goals, then you can create the steps. It's a top-down approach. I taught Tiana this. So we do this all the time, where we always start with like 5-year goals, 10-year goals, 1-year goals, like this year, and then we go to like monthly goals, to kind of like put everything in perspective and make sure it's all tied together. Awesome. So that's kind of, oh, right. Before we kind of end this off and like end with a little discussion or any questions you guys have, I did want to introduce to you all something new that I'm bringing out for the first time in a little while. First time in a while, which is the Bold Brave Boss Getaway. Yes, that's me in that photo. Hi. And my 2 friends from college who approved of this, just to make sure you guys knew that. This is going to be my new 1-day virtual retreat. This particular upcoming one will be on a Sunday, just so you all know. And it's going to be for entrepreneurs like you to kind of learn how to stand out. So we're going to really dig into that. We're going to talk about more of this fear stuff. We talk more about how to break past it, what steps you can take. We're going to do live challenges, and it's really going to be about, like, if you've been scared to do something, if you've been fearing the outcome, really fearing anything, this is going to be the time to address it. And really figure out how to get past it, because I'm going to leave you with actionable steps that you can take, and I will be holding you accountable to them. So if that doesn't sound good to you, then don't sign up. But I did want to make sure you're all aware of that. I will send an email out afterwards. Domi, have you ever done a workshop on affirmations visualization? Sorry, I just saw it now. I did actually do a vision one back in November, and I'm going to do another one in June. So that was one of my first ones, and it was really fun. So I will be doing that again, because they're really fun and everyone loves talking about vision. And I see everyone's been in the chat for a little bit, and I just kind of missed a lot of it. But anyway, I will be sending an email afterwards with this replay, just so you all know, as well as information about the getaway. But does anyone have any questions at all from all of this, or anything they would like to say?
This has been my favorite workshop of yours. Like,
Oh,
this was so cool. I love it.
oh, it was different. It's a different one.
Yeah.
Switching things up a little bit. Did you come to the vision one in November, by the way, Tiana?
I don't remember.
I don't think you did. I think that was one you actually didn't, because you came to the one before that. Anyway, I was just curious. I think you'll enjoy that one when I do it. I would love to hear, by the way, in the chat, if you guys would like to, kind of what your biggest takeaway was from this whole workshop before we all sign off. So feel free to type it again if you feel more comfortable. But if you'd like to say it out loud, you also may.
Well, the whole thing, really. But, well, I really like how you listed out all the types of courage, because it got me thinking about all the different types and how strong they are for me, or how strong or weak they are for me. I don't think I've ever actually thought about how there's like multiple types of courage. I've always just kind of seen it as like one vague concept. So
it's really fun to kind of think about, like, because there are ways that we're all brave, right? Like I'm normally I always consider myself a cowardly person. Like, I'm afraid of a lot of things, but then I was like, but I moved to LA with no job and no house. Like, that's pretty brave.
yeah.
So clearly there's something else there. So yeah, there are the different types. I also think that addition of like the somehow like intuition courage is kind of interesting to think about, because I feel like it is a separate thing.
On top of that, just to kind of build, is like, for me, the biggest takeaway is that, like, being aware of the different types of courage has helped me be able to recognize the strengths a bit more, because initially when I was like, oh, it's a workshop on courage, like, that's something I need a lot of. But then it's like, I realized, there is a lot of courage that I have, and like being able to recognize those strengths will help me kind of build on the ones that I do need to work on.
Exactly. Oh, I love that. Like, knowing like the places where you are good. Like, I know for me, the spiritual courage is really up high, and I always forget that I'm like, oh, I'm like totally chill with like seeing different points of view, and I don't mind not knowing what's ahead spiritually, and like all of that. Like, that has never made me afraid in any way, and I've never clung to anything in that sense. I was like, oh, well, I've got that. And I think that's helpful to know. So, and I think we all have this something that we all have that you can, and I know Kimmy for sure, like, I think you got maybe a slightly different, probably order to order to yours than a lot of us. Because I know that you kind of don't struggle as much with, for example, standing up for what you believe in or saying things that you think are maybe true.
Yeah, I've definitely never had a problem with standing up, and like you mentioned when you were in high school and the
Yeah.
person was getting beat up, I was the person that stepped in and said, if you're gonna beat anybody up, it's gonna be me. So let's see what's gonna happen. And they're like, because I was 5'10" in high school and solid muscle.
Oh, well, there you go. But that's really cool because, like, it first of all shows the difference because we're all different, right? We all have different kinds of courage. But like, you know, I just find that interesting that, because I knew that you would be the kind of person that would do that.
And like, I do stuff like skydiving, saving up money to do the sky jump in Vegas. So like
skydiving.
My physical courage and my moral courage are definitely my highest points.
I find that really interesting too, because I know that you got into the accident, which I don't know if that hurt you at all in that way, but it seems like you're still like, oh.
At this point, I spend every day in pain. And the way I see it is, if I'm going to be in pain anyway, why not just have fun and do what I'm going to do? Because if I need to recover, I need to recover.
Love that. I love that.
I'm learning. I'm actually starting a blog about living with the pain and everything. I'm calling it Living Broken Mind and Body.
Ooh, okay. Yes, please share that with me when you start it. I would love to read that.
I'm hoping to launch it around the beginning of May. So
okay. Oh, please do. I really want to read that. I think that'd be really interesting. And you have a lot of even interesting stories to tell. I think we all have interesting stories to tell, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Because that's the thing I find that some people get. This is why I also want you guys to make sure that you look back at like where you were, what you've done, all of that good stuff, because sometimes we forget that we have interesting stories. Not everyone, some of us are pretty good at remembering, but some of us can struggle to remember that we've also had super interesting things happen in our lives, and we can use that to our advantage. So anyone else want to share their takeaways as well?
I put mine in the chat because it's kind of loud in my house right now.
Oh, that's right. I didn't even notice that. This keeps happening. Knowing where my courage stands with the types of courage and the actionable steps that I need to take in my business. Good. Yeah. Make sure that you do like that whole, like as much of the journaling as you can and really writing down like these are the brave steps I'm going to take. The more you can set goals for yourself with it, the better. So the more you can be like, okay, I'm going to do one brave thing every week or something like that, makes it a little bit easier to kind of push yourself a little bit, but understanding your own limitations as well. So I like to give myself, now I've kind of given myself, I don't always like to set numbers, but every month I give myself something uncomfortable to focus on. And I've been doing this now since March because in March, I focused on money mindset, which scared the crap out of me. And I hate money. I hate looking at it. I hate numbers. So I spent the entire month of March just focusing on my money mindset. It worked. And this month I spent a lot of time focusing on courage and the things that I felt like I was still afraid of, which I felt like I needed to be more open about as an authenticity coach, because I was like, I need to be talking about this or putting it out there. So that, definitely. Oh yeah, you're talking about skydiving. That's I do want to go. That's the one thing that I'm like, I do want to go skydiving. I do not have a fear of heights, thankfully. So let's all go skydiving together. Let's all do skydiving together. Anyway, I hope you guys really enjoyed this. Please don't be afraid to let me know if you have any other questions. You know where to find me. And I will see you all another time. I'll stick around for another few minutes if anyone wants to chat about anything. But other than that, I think we finish things off here. So thank you for coming, and give yourselves a big pat on the back for showing up for yourselves and me.
Thanks so much, Domi. This was awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you
everybody.
guys. I'm gonna
I
share.
love these workshops. They're a lot of fun.
Joy, I know you've been to quite a few of them too. So I'm really happy to always have you here.
I missed a couple months, but it kept aligning with things that I had to do. So I was like,
Which was fine. It's fine. This is, we do the best we can with times. I once tried to do one on a weekday evening, but I learned that was just not working for people. It just wasn't working for the majority of people, which is frustrating. But
yeah.
anyway, but I'm glad that you're able to come to another one because when I saw your name pop up just yesterday, I was like, yes, she's back.
Yeah, I'm hoping to make more.
Yay. Well, I'm not gonna be doing them monthly anymore. I'm doing every other month, just because of my own energy. Monthly was just not cutting it. So the next one's gonna be in June. But obviously you know where to find me if you ever want to chat. And I do like wine chats with people and all this other stuff. So all right. Guess these two guys are still hanging around. Is there any questions or anything you had? Or we can all just have a staring competition. Either one works. We can do that. No. I will actually pop off then. But if you guys know where to find me, I know that you do. I know I'm still talking to Tiana. I've talked to you like every day. But anyway, thank you guys so much again, and we'll talk later.
Bye.
Bye.